ASEAN Talks. We are talking about the logistics system in ASEAN and also in Thailand. And still with us, Dr. Ruth Banomyong and Mr. Chalermsak Kanchanavarin. And we were talking about the logistics system, the rules and regulation of Thailand and a neighboring country. In logistics, in the paper, I just read this paper. It said there is 7 sectors involved together: custom, ports, maritime transport, rail transport, road transport, inland waterway transport, air transport, logistics services. Which one is Thailand's strength? Which one is our weakness? And how can we complement the ASEAN region, or how can we use our neighbor to complement us? Maybe.
Okay. For me, if we go through one after another, it may be quite difficult to find our strength actually in Thailand.
Maybe any one that like the most outstanding?
I think logistic business in general in Thailand is developing. We are picking up from in the past we always talk about transportation. Now people start to realize, okay, logistics is different from transportation, and there are multi-stakeholders involvement rather than just only the transporters. So I think in terms of the port operation, they are doing their job, but I think we are still exploiting or utilizing only a few ports so far. Even airport, we can see now that we have 2 airports. But we are utilizing only 1 airport as in the airport, where the leading countries now they are using more than 1 airport already.
Right.
You see, so I think we have to fine tune how we can utilize our infrastructure. Also, one of the critical things that I think is also important is like ICD that we have in Inland Container Depot.
Inland
Container Depot.
Okay.
That we interlink with the by rail to the
Right.
to and from Lam Chabang for the connectivity as well. For this one, we have been doing this for I think almost 20 years for the ICD. It has been a very good concept to interconnect
between
across
each
the
kind of
modes.
transportation.
Right. But we don't do more. Once it's established, there's only one.
Okay.
The question is, why don't we think more and try to connect with some other modes?
Let me ask you this. Since last government and also this government has been talking about the high-speed train that are going to be invested by China, would it change anything?
My simple question is, how long we have been talking about this one?
It's aggressively just 2 years ago, though. I think we hear more and more. I don't know when is it going to happen.
But I think we need to separate, because the discussion that we are having is, I think, mostly focused on the freight logistics and the logistics of goods.
Right.
High-speed train is not really for
It's
freight.
for
It's more for
passengers,
people.
right.
And again, that's another thing that people tend not to realize. It is true that the majority of the discussion related to logistics is
Right.
on goods.
Right.
Goods moving, value added, doing the
right.
packaging, transshipment, consolidation, all these things. But in reality, there's another dimension of logistics that we're not really talking about, which is the people logistics.
Right.
How can people move from point A to point B?
Right.
And if you look at the case of the ICD, it's quite interesting, because we talk a lot about the State Railway of Thailand, right? And
Which started the same year as Japan.
yeah.
Railway system.
Yes. And what is very fascinating is they had this idea, do the ICD. Originally, the concept was very good, and they were able to shift from road to train
Right.
to go to Lam Chabang. But then now what is happening is that at the ICD, the ratio has been reversed. It's more than 80% by road.
Yes.
At the ICD, instead of having a majority of rail transport. So in a sense, it's defeating its purpose.
Right. So it's become
I
more
think
like a obstacle.
Like
or
Ajahn said,
delay, or
the challenge
Not
of
really.
are we
Thailand.
not fully utilize what we have?
It's a coordination. Everyone needs to be able to play their part.
Right.
You develop an ICD, but if the rail network or the rail operator is not capable.
So we are talking about the policy and rules and regulation again, procedures.
Yeah.
Well, it's rule regulation up to the implementation.
Right.
How does it trickle down? And this is a key challenge, is that you can always have the best rules, you can always have the best policy, but if the people that under the stakeholders cannot perform,
Right.
then it defeats the purpose. It's the weakest link, and the weakest link defeats totally the purpose of the ICD. Right? And now everyone is using the road, and the road are damaged.
Right.
There used to be the operation of the railway linkage between Maptaput and also, to Lam Chabang
Right.
up to Bangkok. but it fails. It failed.
Just as simple as that.
And now it disappear. Such, I
They
mean,
totally disappeared.
but
yeah.
infrastructure is there actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
No
a train
operator.
station at Mataput. They
operator.
can do it.
because no one really used it, or because it's not as convenient as others.
Someone or I don't know for what reason, but doesn't make it feasible. You see.
Yeah, and another problem is this, is that if you look at the rules, like the State Railways of Thailand doesn't allow non-personnel of the State Railway of Thailand to drive the locomotives.
So that's
So
another
even if it's a
problem.
private concession, you still need to use their
There
staff.
are people.
And there's always a problem.
And there's always human resources
Yes,
problems.
because one of the main problem of every government unit, when you talk about any issues at all, will be the amount of the human resources or the quality of human resources.
I think the challenge of Thailand we should focus on is not to drive the cost down, but how we can increase the ratio of the other mode of transport rather than road transport.
Cost effective?
Yeah, of course, by rail it's 3 times cheaper.
Right.
By maritime it's 5 times cheaper.
Talking about maritime, there is some discussion of the government that they want to dig up some part in the south and make it some kind of strait or channel.
But the Kra Canal,
Yeah,
the story-
what is your opinion on that?
that project has been, I think, in its inception since Narai the Great.
It has been brought up and fall down
You know,
and brought
each time there's a new government, they're always talking about the Kra Canal.
Or it's just an idea to entertain.
No, it's not an idea to entertain, because if you look in the past, like in the past centuries, they had this idea like the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal.
Right.
So there was this idea that was really in place.
Right.
But if you think about it today, from an environmental perspective,
Right.
can you really do it?
Right.
Community perspective,
It's almost like we
it's
chop
impossible.
the
It's really,
country
it's really impossible.
into parts.
So now they're changing the concept into like land bridge, what they call a land bridge, so that goods will be transferred from the Andaman Sea to the Gulf of Thailand. But when you have a land bridge, you have double handling. So the total cost needs to be less. So what you save in terms of time should be reflected in the amount of money that you have to pay for the double handling. So it's becoming quite complicated. And at the end of the day, who is going to finance it and what are going to be the returns?
Well, it's always sound fancy to mention it with each government when they're taking
I
office.
would rather recommend that we start with the existing infrastructure
Right.
and we can make it better. For example, like you said maritime transport by Chao Phraya River. How we can do containerized transport? I mean, over this route, from north to south, from south to north. This just simple thing, and how we can connect across the mode. We have been talking so much about multi-transport. And Thailand is one of the first countries in the region that we have multi-transport act coming out.
Right.
And we are one of the model of the ASEAN actually. But so far nobody talks about how to connect across the mode.
So how do you think maybe the government should be, of course, government have to be the one to start it.
Right.
How do you think they can just make it happen? The
This-
connectivity between each mode or the integration of each unit together?
I think they should design from the top view, integrate all the parties concerned. But that's not easy task, I think. Once they talk, they start to fight sometimes.
Well, if you look at the way how transport is managed in Thailand, you have the Department of Highway, Department of Marine, Air Transport. So in fact, it's separated by modes of transport.
Right.
So it's not surprising that each one is going on their own way. And that is why the ministry decided to have this agency called the Office of Transport Planning to try to coordinate
mediator.
better and do this modal integration. But at the end of the day, the budget doesn't belong to the OTP.
Right.
The budget belongs to each agencies.
Right.
And they have their own agenda. I think it's a question of setting up the priorities. The priorities in terms of how can they interlink. I think we shouldn't be ashamed by saying that Thailand we've developed as a road economy.
Right.
Right? And we shouldn't be ashamed by that because it was successful. But now we know that as a road economy in the long term, it's not very sustainable.
Right.
So let's look at the other alternatives. We look at the State Railway of Thailand, we don't know where to start.
Okay.
we look at river transport. There's a lot of potential, but a lot of things need to be done. Like the dredging, river transport, like on the Chao Phraya, on the main river.
But it used to be our main channel of transportation since, I don't know, 100 years ago.
Sure, but the volumes are
It can
different
be revived.
But the volumes are different. The type of vessels are different. You want
Right.
containerized transport, you need to have a certain depth
Right,
for the
right.
vessels to be able to go through.
But it can be revived, right?
It can be revived, and we have probably to tear down a number of bridges around Bangkok, especially in Nuan Chawi Bridge, which is the biggest problem.
A lot of people are not going to be happy.
Well, it's a choice that you have to make.
Right.
It's a choice that you have to make if you want to promote the development of inland waterway transport. Right.
Okay.
So these are all these things that we need to look and we need to understand. In Thailand, I think road transport is over 90% in terms of the modal share, and all of the government have been saying, yes, we need to increase the share of the other modes of transport. But the problem is, if the other mode of transport cannot perform, how can they increase their share?
Right.
And in fact, their share has been reducing and reducing.
Right.
And that is a trend.
Is that why it's so much traffic too?
That's why there's so much traffic.
It's just out of the subject.
No.
Just
There's
made
so
me
much
think
traffic
like-
because there's more vehicle on the road and we have limited road capacity.
Everybody just get on the road. Well, I was going to ask you about other stuff. We have time again. I was going to ask you that you have been in a lot of international stage. I just want to know whether other countries have the same problem as us in the
Maybe
region.
next time.
Okay, maybe next time. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
you
very
both
much.
for
Thank
your
you very
time. Time flies so fast. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation today because I do, and we know a little more about logistics every day. And that's all the time I have. Until see you guys next time. สวัสดีค่ะ